gentlemen, the UN, begun as a moral force, has become a moral farce. So when it comes to Israel at the UN, you'd probably think nothing will ever change, right? Well, think again. You see, everything will change, and a lot sooner than you think.
When I'm president, believe me, I will veto any attempt by the UN to impose its will on the Jewish state. It will be vetoed 100%. When I become president, the days of treating Israel like a second-class citizen will end on day one.
Stay with us for a few minutes to investigate the USS Liberty incident. The USS Liberty warship. Liberty, which was a cargo vessel during the Second World War, was converted into a spy vessel by the top-secret U.S. National Security Agency and was equipped with the most advanced electronic, eavesdropping, tracing, and signal transmission equipment. Liberty was dispatched to the Sinai region to monitor the communications of countries involved in war during the Third War between Israel and Arab countries. On June 8, 1988, at 8 a.m., 8 Israeli spy planes flew over Liberty, upon which a large-scale flag of the United States was flying. At 2 p.m., several fighter and bomber aircrafts of Mr. and Mirage 3 attacked the American vessel with missiles, napalm bombs, and guns. This air attack lasted for 20 minutes, and it was concentrated on electronic antennas and dishes of the vessel. Liberty burst into flames and tilted to one side. 34 crewmen died, and about 170, including the captain of the warship, Commander McGonigal, were severely injured. At 2:24, 3 Israeli boats attacked the vessel with torpedo missiles and opened fire with 20mm and 40mm guns. At 2:31, an Israeli torpedo hit the middle of the vessel, exactly on the spot on which the spy systems of signal transmission were installed. Another 25 crew members were killed as the result of this operation. Some of the wounded died out of injuries within few months after the attack. Israeli frigates equipped with artillery surrounded Liberty and started fire on the crew members. At 3:15, the order of abandoning the ship was commanded. The Israeli warships started fire on rescue boats full of crews and sank 2 boats. Exactly when the American sailors were being slaughtered, the questionable cancellation order of the rescue mission of aircraft carrier of the U.S. 6th Fleet was issued by the White House. The helicopter of the U.S. Navy landing on Liberty warship after the attack of Israel. 34 American sailors were killed in this attack. Out of 294 crew members of the warship, 174 were injured. This casualty was the highest casualty of the American Navy after the Second World War. Less than an hour after the attack, Israel declared to Washington that her forces had committed a tragic mistake.
Was it Israel's interest that caused them to bomb and kill 37 innocent Americans on the Liberty? It was a terrible tragedy, and that's what happens when a spy ship spies. Terrible.
Moshe Dayan issued the order of attacking the Liberty while knowing about the identity of the American warship. Unlike other similar incidents like the attack of North Korea to Pueblo's spy ship, an intentional attack of Iraq to the USS Stark, the bombardment of the USS Cole in Aden, and the mid-air collision of the USA and China, the attack on Liberty was immediately overlooked by the then-President Lyndon Johnson and Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense. The White House and the Congress accepted the justification of Israel without any hesitation and left the case unsolved. Later, Israel paid a $6 million indemnification to the USA. According to reports, 2 of the Israeli pilots who refused to attack the Liberty were sentenced to 18 years of imprisonment. They hit a spot of Israel's submarine torpedoes on the Liberty hull. This warship was equipped with the most advanced technology of signal transmission and was worth $40 million. But there was 821 holes on its hull after the attack, and it was so much damaged that could not be used on operational missions, and her scraps were sold $100,000 in 1970.
I represent the USS Liberty Veterans Association, the LVA. I am the LVA's current president. Our mission statement states that we strive to have the truth told to the American public about the Israeli attack. That is, the attack was brutally deliberate. I'm not critical towards the American public, as they have been deceived by our government, Israel, and the media, which is influenced and controlled by Israeli supporters. To wit, laws have been broken or thwarted to maintain our relationship with Israel, and I'll provide you with details as I know them. It is my contention that by investigating the Liberty story, a very sinister historical blight becomes defined. I pray America has the guts to look inwardly and take the right steps to correct not only the Liberty injustices, but also become acutely aware of Israelis' actions, past, present, and future, against humanity in Palestine.
The GTR-5 sign and the flag of the USA were clearly recognizable. On June 8, 1967, a reconnaissance aircraft of Israel fleet reported that a U.S. Sea Force cargo vessel had been spotted just outside radar network of Israel shore defenses with a sign of GTR-5 on its hull. The bodies of victims on the deck of Liberty. Both Israel and the USA remained silent about the details of this incident. Israel has always claimed that they mistook Liberty for one of the Egyptian vessels, and they thought that the warship was bombarding Israel forces fighting in the Sinai region, and none of their pilots observed the USA flag, taking out the victim bodies killed during the attack on Liberty. Admiral Thomas Muller. Anyone who cannot identify the Liberty will not tell the difference between the White House and the Washington Monument. The crew of the warship repaired the engine and radio equipment of the Liberty after the attack, and the warship sailed slowly to Malta. The most displeasing issue of the survivors was that their own government was concealing the incident. According to John Harakowski, one of the survivors, when they arrived in Malta, the crew were divided to small groups and were interrogated. Admiral Isaac Kidd warned the crew not to speak to anyone about the incident. He said this is confidential, and you should never discuss this with anyone, not even to your wives, never. If you do, you will be tried and will end your lives in prison or worse. The headline of one of the newspapers in the USA reads, Israeli torpedo U.S. Navy ship, 4 killed. American media, based on the concept of high-ranked politicians, tried to downplay the incident. Survivors' statements and published memories all reflect that the attack was completely knowing, with full power aiming to completely destroy the Liberty and all of her crew members. After the incident, the surviving crews were dispatched on missions in another warships to be under control, and so that the opportunity to speak about the Liberty would be taken from them. In 1975, the weekly newspaper of Spotlight started to publish some facts about the incident, which were collected from the statements of eyewitnesses. The wounded crew of the Liberty were taken care of in the bottom part of the ship. According to these statements, in the first part of the attack, the radar antennas and the equipment of the warship were targeted and the flag of the USA was destroyed. The crew immediately replaced another flag to show the US identity of the Liberty. But Israel's aim was to completely destroy the warship while knowing about her American identity. Then Israeli fighters and vessels set fire on the deck of the warship, and as a result, many crew members of the vessel, including the commander of the Liberty, were killed and many others were severely burnt. Then boats equipped with machine guns opened fire on the wounded. The operation style showed the aim of Israel. None of the passengers should survive. Hostile action of Israel and the inaction of the USA. Israel's behavior in attacking the American warship of Liberty is a clear example of hostile actions of one country against the citizens and interests of other countries. Israeli authorities clearly put the responsibility on the USA's shoulders, and General Yiftach Spector, the pilot of the first Israeli Mirage jet attacking the Liberty, expressly declared, "As far as I know, the mistake was of the USS Liberty being there in the first place, the USA's cover-up of the attack of Israel. Following the Israeli lies, the USA had a questionable and blameworthy behavior. U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara and President of the United States Lyndon Johnson agreed to declare mistake identity as the cause of incident. In 1976, the confidential report of the Congress concealed that the attack on Liberty was completely deliberate and knowing. Additionally, the report of an independent investigation committee declared the action of Israel as a hostile action. Captain Ward Boston, the head of the investigation committee, informed about the signing of an agreement between President Lyndon Johnson and Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense. According to this deed, it was decided that the conclusion of the report of Sea Force be designed in such a way that despite all present documents and evidence which suggested that the attack was deliberate, the attack be declared as a result of mistaken identity. A project to cover up Israel's war crime. The third probable target of this action was to cover up other crimes of Israel. Concurring with this attack, Ariel Sharon was busy in slaughtering thousands of Egyptian and Palestinian war prisoners and burying their bodies in the Sinai region. Israeli commanders confessed to this crime many years later. The attack on Liberty would divert the attentions from this massacre from one hand, and on the other hand, would remove the possibility that the radio signals would be traced by the Liberty and the criminal action of Israel in slaughtering Egyptians and Palestinians would not be disclosed. Based on unconfirmed reports, the $40 million warship of Liberty was eavesdropping and spying about the slaughter of the Egyptian war prisoners by Israelis. Finally, the case of the Liberty was closed without any independent investigation or examination of the real causes of the attack, persecution or punishment of the perpetrators, and with many uncertainties and unanswered questions. To prove this claim once more that the USA is under the Zionist control and they rule over its fundamental structures of power.
100%. They've been our most reliable. It's our true friend over there, and we're going to protect Israel 100%.
The opinion of the Supreme Leader of Iran. The Supreme Leader of Iran, the material and immaterial expense which is imposed on the government and people of America by the Zionist regime is staggering. The Supreme Leader of Iran refers to the expense and disasters which were imposed by the global Zionism and its illegitimate offspring, that is Israel. This is completely exact and based on historical facts. Incidents like the attack on the Liberty, nuclear theft, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, 9/11, and similar incidents are some of the most important tragedies which the Zionists inflicted on the American people.
سردمداران سیاسی مدعی حقوق بشر نیز چشم بر این همه جنایت بسته و بدون شرم و پروا از اون رژیم فاجعه آفرین حمایت کرده و در نقش وکیل مدافع آن ظاهر می شود. در اینجا مایلم پندی خیرخواهانه به سیاستمداران آمریکایی که تاکنون همواره به عنوان مدافع و پشتیبان رژیم صهیونیستی در صحنه حاضر شده اند بدهم. این رژیم تاکنون برای شما دردسرهای بیشمار داشته است. چهره شما را در میان ملت‌های منطقه منفور و شما را در چشم آنان شریک جنایات صهیونیست‌های غاصب معرفی کرده است. هزینه‌های مادی و معنوی که در طول سال‌های متمادی از این رهگذر به دولت و ملت آمریکا تحمیل شده است سرسام‌آور است و احتمالاً در آینده اگر همین روش ادامه یابد هزینه‌های شما سنگین‌تر هم خواهد شد.